It was October 20th, 1977, and the skies darkened, and the plane's engine coughed, as if choking on its own insufficiency. Inside the Convair CV-240, the members of Lynyrd Skynyrd were wrapped in a hush so palpable it felt like dread. But let's not rush into that night. Let's first take a step back to the 60s, where our story begins. Born in the sunny realms of Jacksonville, Florida, in 1964, a group of teenagers laid the foundation of what would become a rock and roll phenomenon. They were friends, confidants, and passionate musicians. In those early days, they called themselves My Backyard. As they grew, both in talent and as individuals, many things changed. Their band name, the lineup, and their gigs, from small venues to grander stages. Yet, the essence remained. Ronnie Van Zant's haunting vocals, Gary Rossington's and Alan Collins's vibrant guitar strings, and the bass and drums forming the heartbeat of their music. It took 5 years of struggle, of playing at small venues, before they found their identity as Lynyrd Skynyrd in 1969. By 1973, their first album, pronounced as the band's name itself, marked their territory in the southern rock genre. This wasn't just music, it was a narrative of the southern states, encapsulated in tracks like Sweet Home Alabama, which reverberated across the US, becoming anthems for an entire generation. Free Bird wasn't just a song, it was a philosophy, a call to unshackle oneself from the norms and soar high, just like a bird in the sky. The rise was meteoric. By the mid-70s, the band had changed but also matured. Members came and went, each leaving an indelible mark. Bob Burns, the original drummer, made way for Artemis Pyle, while Ed King gave way to Steve Gaines. The brotherhood remained intact. They released 5 studio albums and 1 live album, each one a testament to their roots, their hardships, and their triumphs. But they say that stars that shine twice as bright last half as long. As 1977 approached, no one had an inkling that the wings of this free bird were about to be clipped, that the narrative was about to take a sudden, tragic turn, forever sealing itself in the annals of rock history as both a lesson and a cautionary tale. Life was about to serve them a curveball, but before that, Lynyrd Skynyrd was at the pinnacle of their musical journey, selling out arenas, topping the charts, living the dream that started in a backyard in Jacksonville. As the band's Convair CV-240 airplane soared above Mississippi, nobody on board could sense that the very wings that lifted them would soon betray them. The plane had been filled with fuel in Greenville, South Carolina, but had no fuel gauge to indicate the level. An oversight? Perhaps. But in that moment, it was a detail glossed over by the ecstasy of a successful concert and the anticipation of another. The mood on the plane was light, peppered with laughter and shared stories. A close-knit group, they were brothers and sisters bound by music, living in a whirlpool of fame and fortune. Ronnie Van Zant, the band's magnetic lead singer, conversed with Steve Gaines, the talented guitarist whose recent entry had injected fresh life into the group. Cassie Gaines, Steve's sister and a backup vocalist, sat with other members of the entourage. They were heading towards Baton Rouge, Louisiana, for the next concert. It was supposed to be another high note in their ascending career graph, but in the cockpit, the atmosphere was tense. The plane, though outdated, had been deemed serviceable. Yet, the pilots were already battling minor mechanical issues. As minutes ticked by, one of the 2 engines began to sputter. The experienced pilots exchanged glances, their faces drained of color. The reserves were dwindling, faster than they had calculated. With a heavy heart, the pilot informed the band of the situation. The airplane's descent was agonizingly slow, each second ticking by like a morose drumbeat, leading to an inevitable crescendo. Inside the cabin, heartbeats were synced in a rhythm of collective fear and apprehension. The pilots, who had earlier informed the band of the grim situation, wrestled with the controls as they tried to salvage a seemingly impossible scenario. Now more than ever, they wished they had better instruments, something, anything, that could have given them a lifeline. Fingers clutched armrests so hard that knuckles turned white. The band members, who had faced large audiences with nerves of steel, were now each in a quiet struggle with their own vulnerability. Words were scarce. What could you say when confronted with such implacable, indiscriminate fate? As the pilots attempted to steer the failing aircraft towards the strip at Macomb, a critical decision was made. They would attempt a desperate emergency landing in a densely wooded area. This was no longer about reaching a destination. It was about survival. "Brace for impact," came the chilling announcement over the intercom. The pilots adjusted their headsets and tightened their seatbelts. Their brows were furrowed, their eyes narrow slits of focus. It was the last stretch of an unwinnable race against time and physics. The plane made contact with the treetops, its wings shearing off branches as it plummeted. The sound was a hellish symphony of breaking metal, splintering wood, and human cries. It felt like an eternity, yet it was over in seconds. The Convair CV-240 had disintegrated upon impact, its wreckage scattered like the remnants of a broken dream. The plane crashed into a forest near Gillsburg, Mississippi, shattering into pieces upon impact. Trees snapped like matchsticks, and metal screamed as it tore through the dense foliage. In that heart-stopping moment, 3 lives were snuffed out: Ronnie Van Zant, Steve Gaines, and Cassie Gaines. The rest were seriously injured, but they had survived, left to bear the scars of a tragedy that would be their life's most poignant chord. When rescue teams arrived, the scene was one of utter devastation. Ronnie Van Zant, the band's lead vocalist and unifying force, had not survived. Neither had Steve Gaines, the guitarist whose promise had been so abruptly extinguished. His sister, Cassie Gaines, whose vocal harmonies had enriched the band's sound, was also gone. 3 lives, 3 pivotal cogs in the Lynyrd Skynyrd machine, were lost forever. The aftermath was a surreal tableau of wreckage and despair. Band members who survived were pulled from the twisted metal and conveyed to hospitals, their injuries ranging from broken bones to critical conditions. Among the survivors was Artemis Pyle, the drummer who, despite a broken sternum, had managed to crawl out and seek help. Investigators would later reveal that the plane had run out of fuel, a catastrophic error in judgment that turned deadly. The story was covered extensively, from Rolling Stone to international newspapers, leaving fans and the music industry in collective mourning. The world was stunned, fans heartbroken. The band that had become synonymous with Southern rock, whose notes were sewn into the very fabric of American culture, was shattered. The music would live on, but the men and women who made it had paid an unimaginable price. In the months following the crash, a hush fell over the music world like a pall. The lively chords of Sweet Home Alabama and the soul-stirring anthems of Free Bird now carried a somber undertone. The band that had once stood at the pinnacle of the Southern rock genre was irrevocably fractured, its key members either lost to tragedy or struggling with physical and emotional scars. As the nation grieved, legal battles raged on. Lawsuits were filed, and the National Transportation Safety Board investigated the incident. Ultimately, the ill-fated flight was chalked up to fuel exhaustion and pilot error, but the conclusions did little to ease the weight of loss that the survivors and their families bore. Yet, amidst the chaos, a flicker of hope emerged. Lynyrd Skynyrd's music found a new life in the collective conscience, serving as a tribute to the fallen and a testament to the band's indomitable spirit. Radio stations continued to play their hits, sometimes in memoriam, sometimes in celebration of the enduring magic of rock and roll. In 1987, the winds of change began to blow once more. The remaining band members faced an existential question: should Lynyrd Skynyrd exist without Ronnie, Steve, and Cassie? It was Ronnie's own brother, Johnny Van Zant, who answered the call, stepping into the shoes that seemed impossible to fill. Under his lead vocals, the band staged a tribute tour, turning each concert into a remembrance ceremony, a platform to both grieve and celebrate. As years rolled into decades, other founding members would depart from this world. Still, the band played on. Even the advent of the internet and streaming platforms couldn't dampen their spirit. Their music was streamed millions of times by a new generation of listeners who found in their songs the same timeless messages of freedom, defiance, and Southern pride. Then, in January 2018, came the announcement that no one wanted, but many had anticipated: the farewell tour. It was a decision met with understanding, a concession to the unforgiving march of time. But even as the band toured for the last time, the members were hard at work on their 15th studio album. Yet, even farewell tours are not immune to the vicissitudes of life. Gary Rossington, the band's last surviving original member, passed away in 2023. It was a symbolic full stop to an era, but by no means an end to the legacy. Today, in 2023, the band's influence is far from faded. With over 28 million records sold in the United States alone, Lynyrd Skynyrd's music continues to inspire a new generation. The band was immortalized in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2006, and even now, fans make pilgrimages to the crash site, a quiet Mississippi forest that became an unlikely mecca, bearing witness to both human frailty and resilience. In the end, the Lynyrd Skynyrd story is not just about music. It's about a shared journey through life's highest peaks and lowest valleys. It's about how the chords of a guitar and the words of a song can encapsulate an emotion, a moment, or even a lifetime. And while the band may no longer exist in the form we once knew, its spirit endures, carried forward by those who believe in the power of music to heal, to inspire, and to immortalize. So, as you listen to your favorite Lynyrd Skynyrd track today, take a moment to remember not just the music, but the men and women behind it. How will you keep their memory alive? Thank you for taking this journey through the life and legacy of Lynyrd Skynyrd. If you found this story compelling, please consider sharing it, commenting, or subscribing for more intriguing stories in the near future.